Stephen Stills had found the band that he'd always wanted.
I don't tell no tales about no hot, dusty roads.
They were widening the street on Franklin, a street in Hollywood. I went outside and they were all arguing about the name, that what they could call the group. And I went out and I saw on a bulldozer, I saw the word Buffalo Springfield.
I give you loving and a place to take on.
Buffalo Springfield represented a hip new wave of musical emigres, more a collective of mutually ambitious individuals than the uniform pop groups that preceded them.
My name is Neil Young.
Right, Neil, how do you do?
Lead guitar player, how do you do? This is Richie Furay. Big Dewey Martin, Buffalo Dew.
Hello, Dewey.
Bruce Palmer from Toronto, Canada. Okay. Steve Stills from New Orleans.
Buffalo Springfield brought a new musical momentum to the Sunset Strip. And when their audience provoked the city's reactionary establishment, their response was a pop protest that, like LA, was both cool and commercial.
Los Angeles City is the scene of one of the great culture wars in American history.
They want everybody to do the same thing and live their own life. All they want you to do, they want you to grow up, get an education, raise children, and die.
From the coming of Hollywood, with its sinful lifestyles, into a city into which 1 million pious Protestant Midwesterners had moved during the 1920s.
Because you don't have a job, because you don't have a direction, you're not doing anything, you're not a part of the super society which is called America.
And in a sense, the Battle of the Sunset Strip in the late 60s was the last battle in this 40 or 50 year long clash between Hollywood Babylon on one hand and the kind of Main Street Puritanism on the other.
Why is it they can put down on our music? I mean, they say it's bad. I mean, they say it's a bunch of noise. They turn down the noise. But is it really noise? Do they ever listen to the words?
There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware.
In the daytime, Sunset Strip had all these sort of posh clothing stores. Those people didn't like the kids hanging out at night. And so pretty soon the police would come down and they'd bring a big bus down and park it right in the middle of the strip. And everyone that was underage would have to get on the bus and they'd take them down to jail. Pulling these beautiful young girls and throwing them on the bus. You know, what is that about? You know, everybody, you know, that's crazy. It's the man. It's the pigs, you know, it's the other side. It's the same people that are trying to send us to war, you know. It's the older generation that doesn't know what life is about.
They were worried about the counterculture.
If everybody's wrong.
Godless communism.
Young people speaking their mind.
Corruption of youth.
So much resistance.
Drugs.
Time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody.
And here he is walking on the street communicating with his peers, and the cop says, "You can't do it. Get off the street."
Paranoia strikes deep into your life.
The Sunset Strip riots provided the perfect showcase for Buffalo Springfield's socially conscious folk rock. A distinctive sound that was sending shockwaves through LA's new musical establishment.
We better stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
I have to say, I saw dollar signs. I thought, these guys are going to do something great.
There was sort of a hole in the marketplace. These guys were doing something that was purely unique and wonderful, and something that, you know, I really loved. That was it, you know, it was like the moment of truth.
Whether or not any one group could hold that much talent, you know, don't forget in the Buffalo Springfield, on top of Neil and Stephen, you had Richie Furay and Jim Messina, and it was explosive.
Despite producing 3 albums and a hit single, a combination of incompatible egos and bad management made Buffalo Springfield's demise inevitable. And by 1968, Stephen Stills and Neil Young were once again solo artists.
If you're political, I guess it means a political revolution, and to some people it's a spiritual revolution. I like to believe that maybe people are getting more together.
I've looked at clouds from both sides now.
When Judy Collins sang, I looked at life from both sides now.
It's clouds, illusions I recall.
Clouds, illusions. We had never used words like that in songs, and so we discover a new songwriter named Joni Mitchell.
Rows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feather canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way, but now they won't.
By 1967, Joni Mitchell, a Canadian folk singer based in New York, had already found success as a writer. But a chance meeting with David Crosby, following his unceremonious exit from the Byrds, would draw her west to LA.
Oh, I've looked at clouds from both sides now.
Walked into a coffee house in Florida. She was singing. My heart nearly stopped.
I really don't know life.
I'd never heard anybody play like her. I'd never heard anybody sing like her. And I most especially never heard anybody write like her. And I still haven't heard anybody write like her. For about a year after that, we stayed together. It was good.
David Crosby had been thrown out of the Byrds and hadn't found Crosby, Stills, and Nash yet. So he was kind of bumming around town in a VW bus with a Porsche engine. And one night David says, come on up to the house, we'll get high. And he always had the best dope. So it was like being invited for a wine tasting at Baron Rothschild's house. About 3 or 4 in the morning, we're pretty wasted. And David said, oh, there's someone I want you to hear. And comes back downstairs with Joni Mitchell, live, with a big guitar.
Light up your lazy blue eyes. Moons up, nights up, taking the town by surprise.
She played songs that hadn't even been recorded yet. Nobody had heard that music. Nobody had heard that voice. And for us, it was like a hallucination.
But by the time Crosby had finished producing her first album, everybody in LA knew about Joni Mitchell.
I did not do a very good job of producing her record, but I did do one wonderful thing, which was keep everybody else off it. That's a good thing.
We have the power, we have the tolerance. We can go in front of a television camera, we can go on the air, and we can say with definition that Hitler was wrong, that Rockwell is wrong, that people who hate Negroes are wrong, right? And we can get up there and shout it to the world, Pete.
I'd spent years with the Hollies perfecting the pop song. Frivolous is not the right word, but certainly a little shallower than the stuff that I was feeling personally. So at one point, the Hollies were not wanting to do my stuff. I'm talking about Marrakech Express, I'm talking about Teach Your Children, I'm talking about Lady of the Island, the first Sleep song. It kind of made me feel bad as a songwriter, because I thought they were decent songs.
At the beginning of 1968, Graham Nash was a highly successful but thoroughly discontent Mancunian pop star. By the end of the year, he'd joined Joni Mitchell, David Crosby, and Stephen Stills on the musical trail to LA.
Would you know we're riding on the Marrakech Express?
Stephen is at loose ends when he's finished Buffalo Springfield. David has been thrown out of the Byrds. He and Stephen start to cut some songs. Graham, as it turns out, meets up with Joni while he's on tour with the Hollies.
I smell the garden in your hair.
Joni and I spent the night together in Ottawa, and I fell completely in love.
Listening to his high harmonies on the Hollies records, David and Stephen have conspired to kidnap him.
Well, let me hear you now.
That's just the thing we need.
On the Marrakesh Express.
David shows up at a Hollies show in England.
Crosby came with his cape and his cane, you know, and his attitude.
Having a hard time with all these drinking guys who don't want to cut Marrakesh Express?
He had the best drugs, he had the best grass, he had the prettiest women, and they were always naked. Crosby said, you know, they're crazy. We'll record them. Come on over here.
If Nash had any doubts, they were banished after a musical gathering in the Hollywood Hills.
My memory of it is that we were in Joni's living room, and David said, hey, Stephen, play that song. And it was, You Don't Have to Cry. And I said, you know, great, sing it again, that's fabulous. Okay, one more time, just sing it one more time. The third time I put my harmony in there and my world changed.
Stephen and I both had the same thought, which rarely happens. We both thought, you know, we know what we're going to be doing.
I heard that sound, and that's what I wanted. I wanted that sound. And I left everything. I left the Hollies, I left my band, I left my family, and I went to America.
Graham Nash was the latest addition to a communal who's who of LA music that had made its home in the most tranquil of city settings.
Los Angeles is unusual. It's this huge, unsparing city, but it has this mountain range running through it. There are several canyons that slice through that, and more or less in a north to southerly trace. Laurel Canyon was settled in the turn of the 20th century, in the early 1900s, by land speculators. It was a place where mostly people would come up to hunt on the weekends. This bucolic canyon in the middle of this unsparing urban environment.
Since the 1920s, Los Angeles had traded on the contrasting allure of sun and surf by day and Hollywood glitz by night. But the spiritual Shangri-La for a generation collectively committed to going back to the garden was Laurel Canyon, a rural paradise nestled right behind Sunset Strip.
Light the fire.
I lived across the street from Mark Volman of the Turtles.
On my street alone was Mama Cass, Henry Diltz, Joni Mitchell, Carl Wilson. You had Jim Morrison right up the hill.
Staring at the fire.
Tim Hardin was living there.
There was Frank Zappa and the Mothers.
There was Fraser Mohawk.
Stephen Stills, David Crosby.
I mean, I'd been living there since the Byrds.
Jackson Brown.
Mickey Dolenz lived around the corner.
Such a cozy room.
Tim Buckley and Larry Beckett lived somewhere else, but they were at our house really, really a lot.
Eric Burden was living in the canyon.
The Doors had a place in the canyon.
John Mayall was living in the canyon.
Crazy Horse had a house in the canyon.
The late, great record